There you go. All right. How's it going? So I have it set up. I have my phone kind of off to the side. Hopefully I'll be able to see comments and then I'm live on Zoom so I can save it and stuff and use it for the podcast as well. Oh, nice. What did you have for dinner? Eric just made dinner. I got home less than an hour ago, so I'm a little bit kind of behind on getting settled in. So I'm going to need to take a couple breaths. I hope that I invite anyone who is either here live with me or jumps on or catching the replay to join in. It's kind of nice, especially if you've had a busy day, to just have those mindful moments and just kind of connect back in for a moment or two. Okay, so today's topic, we're going to talk about the shadow self and the inner child. If you're popping on live, say hi. If you are catching the replay, hashtag replay, and don't hesitate to comment along as you're going as if you were watching it live, because there's still value to that. If something's clicking for you, like yeah, if you're having a light bulb moment, feel free to share it and I will check comments afterwards. I'll get the notifications. Sometimes they get buried a little bit, but I'll certainly go back. So to start out, why don't we just take a moment and we will start with 4 big deep breaths. We're just going to kind of come back into our body so that we're a little bit more present, and we can, if we've been a little bit stressed today, we can kind of notice that tension in our body through those mindful breaths and start to suppress that sympathetic nervous system and activate that parasympathetic nervous system, that rest and digest. I feel like my hair is going a little crazy right now. Okay, so I'm going to do 4 breaths. So again, if you've been around this group, you know the deal. If you're new, we're going to, hi Michelle, we are going to take 4 breaths. Big inhale, you can hold it at the top for a couple counts if you want. And the bottom line is just make sure that your exhale is longer than the inhale. So whatever count that feels comfortable for you, that's telling your body you're safe and it's okay to relax, and it'll bring you back to the present moment and kind of help you settle in. Because it is 8 o'clock. I'm in kind of comfies and ready to wind down for the evening. So I'm going to start. I'm going to do 4 breaths, so feel free to join me and it'll be really nice to kind of settle in. Need a little extra support, you can put your hand over your heart. That just connects you back into your body, and you can blow out your mouth if you're exhaling. It just gives more of a body connection to your breath, whatever you feel most comfortable with. Couple more, and if you can breathe into your belly, that's a bonus. Give a little massage to your organs. How does everyone feel? No, not a silly question, and it doesn't matter. I used to really just do breathe in and out through my nose. I always breathe in through my nose, but I find that if I'm feeling a little bit extra activated, it just feels like more of a connection to my body to feel that breath going out of my mouth with it open, like blowing it out, as opposed to just through my nose. But if I was out in public and just needed to take a few deep breaths, I would have a little bit more subtle, if that makes sense. I hope that answers. But really, whatever feels best for you, whatever your body's kind of asking. If it needs a little extra support and you want it to feel more in your body, maybe out your mouth, because then it's just a little bit more noticeable, right? Just looking at the comments. Jerk chicken wings with baked chickpea pasta. That sounds amazing. Okay. Hi, Mom. All right, so let's get started. This is like, who's excited for this topic? Shadow self and inner child. It is a very, I mean, we could talk about this all day, so I'm trying to keep it kind of condensed as best I can. I have some slides. I'm going to try and stick to the notes, but also it's kind of nice if I can get into a bit of a riff and just kind of go with the flow, but I do also like to stay kind of on track and focused. Before we start, I'm just going to take a quick little drink of my water. I was a little bit behind tonight, so bear with me a little bit. I put a lip smacker somewhere. Oh, there it is. Okay. So today we're going to talk about the subconscious, shadow self, and inner child. Is anyone familiar with it? Is it a new topic for you? Feel free to pop that into the comments. We're going to start with the shadow self. So what is the shadow self? I didn't find a really great definition for it, but I love shadow self. I love psychology. I love those deeper layers of the psyche and starting to understand my own patterns. So I kind of use myself as a guinea pig, which if you can approach it that way and have curiosity around why you are the way you are, it makes healing so much easier because you're always going to approach it in a loving, curious way without the judgment. So I have several books on the shadow. Sorry, I'm like pointing it at the phone, but that's not where the screen is. I have several books on the shadow, and one of them has some kind of journaling prompts, which is super cool. So I was getting a bit more well-rounded with the topic using some resources, which always helps. And then I also use my personal experience. So what is the shadow? It is a collection of our limiting beliefs and all of the perceived shameful experiences, trauma, and subconscious blocks that lay beneath our conscious awareness. If there's any questions along the way, feel free. Hi, Diane. I have a note here just to do a little bit of comparison. We can compare the brain versus the mind. So the brain would be the physical matter, the actual organ, whereas the mind is kind of the workings of it, right? The thoughts that create the emotions, that create the actions, that create the results. It is the hardware. The brain is the hardware. The mind is the software. We can rewire both. We can change our beliefs, and then in the actual physical matter, we can change how the electricity fires in our brain. That's called neuroplasticity. We can rewire our brain, which is super fascinating. One of the ways we can do it is through meditation. We don't have a meditation class in here yet, but it's on the list. I can tell you it's been an interesting journey, the way that the topics have come up, because I keep the poll in the group. So if you've never seen it, feel free to look in the Living Unlimited group here and vote on topics you find interesting. That's how I choose the next topics, because I want to serve you. But it's interesting the journey we've gone on through, starting with the nervous system and talking about mindfulness and some of the other topics that kind of have led us to here. If you haven't seen the ones before, that's no worries. You can always get something from whatever topic is at real time. Sorry, I lose my words sometimes, especially in the evening. And I was talking a lot at work today with all the commercial traffic. So I'm just yeah. But it's just give me 1 second. It's kind of different foundational layers that has led us to this topic that really embodies, like when I think about doing the work, when you hear people talk about doing the work, this is like such a large part of it. And then the topics we've talked about in this group prior to this month's topic kind of help to support this work. The last comparison I had written is conscious mind versus the subconscious, right? The things that are in our awareness versus the that lower awareness, but that actually really drives. So I've read different statistics, 90 to 90%, sorry, 90 to 95 or higher of how we do things and the decisions that we make are driven by our subconscious mind. And when you think about that, that's like pretty wild. It's like we are totally programmed by this thing we're not even fully aware of. Now, of course, we can start to tune that, but for the most of society, that's the way it is. Some of the benefits of shadow work, I wanted to go through those to kind of bring you forward in that, and then we'll go into some of the neuroscience as well. First benefit, emotional well-being. Looking at how the shadow brings out these big emotions. It can be anger, shame, guilt, all of those like big reactions. When someone says, I was really triggered, the way that I would describe that is our nervous system gets activated. There's something we are reacting to in a kind of a primal way, and we're not necessarily conscious of the reason we're activated by it. But, one example can be your body remembers a situation or experience that you had. It could have been in your childhood. Your body remembers it. It kind of gets stored. And then something similar happens and your body kind of acts out or reacts to that situation before we can even really think about it. When we're able to process these big emotions through doing shadow work, it helps us to get back into a state or get into a state of responding versus reacting. Does that make sense? Is everyone okay so far? And this will also help us so that we don't say those things we regret and act out of alignment of our own values, right? Because sometimes we get activated, we get triggered, and we might say something or do something that we wouldn't do if we were in a kind of a resting, calm state. So working through the shadow is a way to bring more of an awareness so that we can be more proactive and respond to the stimulus outside of us and not be so reactive. The second one is mental health. So it is very beneficial to our mental health to be doing this. It is difficult work. That's why they call it shadow work. But when you start to work with the shadow and dive deeper, it's like we're these onions, and I'll explain it a little bit later, but we're starting to peel back these layers of our conditioning and why we are the way we are and why we act the way we act. And a lot of these reactions when we're in kind of this fight or flight reactive state, obviously it's we're putting ourselves in this fight or flight, and that can cause anxiety, that can cause depression, right? It can cause all kinds of mental and physical issues to be so reactive. So when we start to peel back these layers and get a better understanding of the way we operate and why, and we start to heal them, we can break free from that suffering that we're causing ourselves, both physically, mentally, emotionally. Oh, hi, Taylor. I didn't expect you on here. That's so wonderful. Thank you for being here as well. I'm so excited. I see a few people who have popped on and said hi. So this is amazing. Thank you so much. Social connectivity. Another benefit of doing shadow work is when we start to get curious about and observe our own behaviors and just the way we are, and we start to heal it through compassion and love, we can start to pick out these same behaviors and characteristics in others. And you know what, if you've heard someone say, like, if there's something you don't like in another person, it's because there's something about yourself that you're not acknowledging, or, there's an unhealed part. There's so much truth. People are mirrors to us, right? When someone is very triggering to us, they're either acting in a way that we don't allow ourselves to act, maybe a way that we think is shameful or wrong, right? We've decided that that's not an appropriate behavior or a way to talk or something to say, and we've deemed it, we've given it a label deep within ourselves. So when people do those actions or say those things, where it's bubbling something up inside of us we're not allowing to see the light. Does that make sense? And when we can work through those things, not only do we start to pick up on the things we see in others, we start to say, ooh, that was very activating. There's something I need to explore there. And the more that we can do that, and the more we give ourselves that compassion, that love to heal those things, and kind of change our belief system, or question our beliefs, and maybe just do a bit of a shift, we start to extend that same compassion, that same empathy, that same love towards others as well. And we can start seeing when they are acting out, you can see their shadow is coming up to the surface. You can start to say, ooh, they're struggling right now. And we can start to see it, instead of they're annoying or they're too much or this or that. We can start to have compassion, like, oh, something's coming up for them. They're having a hard time. Another thing is self-confidence. When we're able to confront our shadow and do that healing work, it allows us to step into our own, like, our full power. And this is how we start to build self-worth. We're peeling back those layers. We're getting to the core of who we are, in like our true soul, the thing that makes us us. And we start to really connect with that inner being, and start to love her or him, and we start to build that self-worth. Two more. Healing from past wounds. When we are able to rise above our circumstances, have that awareness, we can start to heal. But it requires, like, in order to rise above our circumstances, we have to be willing to look at and heal those wounds that are holding us back. Does this make sense so far? Are there any questions? And then the last one, I'll keep an eye on if there's any questions as we go. I'm hoping this is kind of making sense, but you might need the extra piece to kind of tie it together. So I was trying to keep it kind of linear, but yeah, hopefully we're okay. And then growing into the future. As we do this work, as we peel back those layers, as we heal them, as we connect back with who we truly are, outside of all the societal conditioning and the beliefs that our parents instilled in us, we really start to kind of crack open, and living authentically, living with self-worth, we can start to see the beauty of what a full life can be. All right, if there's no questions, I will keep moving. So ways that we can work with the shadow, there's lots of different ways. And you'll notice some of these things that I list are also ways that we talk about in the nervous system masterclass and mindfulness. There are different tools that we have in our tool belt to regulate our nervous system. When our nervous system's regulated, we're out of that reacting mindset or mind frame. That's when we cannot heal if we're in a state of fight or flight, if our nervous system's activated and our body feels like it's threatened. So we have to do these things that bring us kind of back into our body, make us feel safe, and then give ourselves lots of nourishment and self-love so that we can feel safe looking at those darker parts of us. And I know I think there's just kind of an understanding or perception that shadow work is is scary, but because of, pop culture and the scary movies, there's always darkness and stuff. So when we associate the darkness that we see in media and stuff with our own psyche, but the reality is we're just kind of peeling back the layers of what makes us us, and deciding if the things that drive our beliefs or actions or thoughts, if they're no longer serving us, we can just take a look at it and decide what we want to do going forward. So things we can do: journaling is such a great thing, like just all around. It's good for grief, it's good for just mental health. But when we start working with the shadow, this is what can help us kind of uncover some of those layers. And you can do just kind of intuitive journaling. Just get centered, take some breaths, get quiet, and just start kind of writing things out, or maybe start scribbling a little bit until you start to feel like there's a flow beginning, and then just start writing what comes to mind. If you use your non-dominant hand, I've read different things, that there's theories that it connects with their subconscious mind, or it connects with their inner child, which is the next topic. So you can start to connect with the deeper parts of your psyche, of your subconscious, in order to bring those maybe concerns or those beliefs to the surface, so that when you bring it to the light, you can assess it and heal it. Guided meditation can do that too. You're nice and relaxed, and it brings you on a journey, and you just intuitively see kind of what comes to the surface and what feels good, and connect what you connect with in terms of the content. Yoga is a good practice as well. Obviously, it's not just an asana practice, but yoga has to do with breath work. There's eight limbs of yoga, I think. So there's chanting and different things, but yoga as a movement, even the asana practice, you're getting into your body, you have some movement, you're kind of stirring things up. If you look at it in terms of moving energy around, you're kind of starting to open up that way, if that makes sense. Inner child work, which we'll talk about momentarily. Breath work, like I mentioned, as part of yoga. Self-care, when we feel like we are taken care of, we feel it gives us that sense of safety, and we feel like we have the capacity to explore what is unknown. It doesn't mean it's bad, it's just unknown. And if you are able to approach it, again, get yourself regulated, and you're able to approach it from the right headspace and mindset, it's pretty freaking interesting, I have to say. And of course, working with a professional, whether it's a therapist or a coach, can be so helpful, because they can help guide you. And especially if you're feeling like you're struggling with it and it's a little bit too much, and you feel like you're maybe starting to go down a path that's maybe not the healthiest, that's when you want to definitely call in those extra supports. That's what the tools are for, right? And then of course, mindful practice, having that curiosity, that non-judgment, as we talked about in the mindfulness masterclass. I have a couple of notes written here. The shadow is our greatest teacher. Working with it begins a journey to releasing fear, self-judgment, and shame. And that's what brings us to our best selves. And a couple summary thoughts on the shadow. We must embrace both the light and the dark. I think it's important to be doing both. Don't get too far down that dark rabbit hole. Still be celebrating the light and the joy in your life, and have them working together. Take breaks to integrate. It can be heavy work. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It is very, very profound. But depending on where you're going and what experiences you're kind of uncovering and taking another look at, now as an adult, it can be heavy. Anyone who's gone to therapy and doing talk therapy, or there's different modalities too that go with talk therapy, it's exhausting after a lot of kind of holistic practitioners will say after a session, especially if it was really heavy and very emotional, and you'll feel it when I talk about heavy, it's like there's an energy, but it's physical too. It's like you just feel like, oh my gosh. And although you may have lifted a weight off through talking about it, it's also just like, oh my gosh, it's just, yeah, it's heavy. That's how I would explain it. If you have a better word, feel free to share it in the chat. So it's really important that we take the time in between kind of diving into these different areas of ourselves to integrate the new pattern. If we're choosing to unsubscribe from a certain belief we've had all of our life, or just a behavior, if we're starting to kind of break patterns, rewire our brains, and move forward in a different way, we want to make sure that we're not always constantly doing the work. We want to take breaks to actually integrate the learning and really enjoy it and fully embody it. Know your limits and work within them. Again, if you feel like you're starting to go down a slippery slope, there's something dark that's come up from your childhood, and it's putting you in a bit of a dark place. You don't want to be sitting in the dark. So if you feel, and again, having the mindfulness practice, having the embodiment when you do the body scan, and starting to know your body, you'll start to be able to pick up earlier on where those boundaries lie. So when you start to go, ooh, this is a sticky subject, and it's one that I want to explore and I want to release, and I need to get that weight off, but I'm kind of scared to go down that road. Bring someone with you. It could be a friend. You could talk it out with them. But certainly if you start to feel overwhelmed and like you're losing control, that's a huge red flag. That's a huge, a beacon of saying, like, you need to talk to a professional and have them guide you through it. And last, but I would say the most important of this, is with shadow work. There's a lot of, it's a deep dive into the things we maybe don't love about ourselves, or we find shameful, or we have guilt around. And I want you to know, at the base of it, like, this work is not to say that you are not broken. There's nothing broken about you. And anyway, I want that to be very clear. You are not broken. These are just, we get to, once we become adults, our prefrontal cortex, the front part of our brain is fully developed. That's when we get to rework some of those patterns. That's when we have the full capacity to do that. Are there any questions so far? How is it going? I haven't. Is everyone good so far? Give it a sec. I don't know if anyone's. It doesn't show me if people are on at the moment. I just see, like, when people popped on, say, okay, I see a reaction there. That helps. Thanks, Mom. And if you get any aha moments, or like, I feel like we should have a little code word or something, but just, like, I don't know, throw a light bulb in there or something. Or just say aha. I don't know. Let me know if you have any aha moments. Hey, Taylor. Okay, we're gonna talk about the inner child now. And I think talking about the inner child, maybe I should have started there. I don't know. I just felt like I needed to start with the shadow. Talking about the inner child, I think, will help to kind of loop it around. Oh, thank you, Taylor. She says that this is my self-care this evening. I'm on a walk listening to your wise words. Oh, I hope you're with your pup too. But talking about the inner child will bring us, I think it'll bring more context to the shadow, and kind of what it fully embodies, and then how we work with it as well. So the inner child is part of our subconscious that has been picking up messages way before it was able to fully process what was going on. And that's both mentally and emotionally. Our inner child, it's like, think of it as literally like an younger versions of us that live inside our subconscious mind. Probably sounds weird, but just go come with me on this one. It holds emotions, memories, and beliefs from the past, as well as our hopes and dreams for the future. This is kind of how I was trying to tie in, and I'm gonna mention ego very briefly in a couple slides from here, but I was trying to kind of tie the concepts in, and this is kind of where I got with this. We are born this beautiful little being, totally innocent. Nothing's Hopefully nothing's happened to us yet. We haven't really experienced much yet. We've just come into the world. And at the root of it, we are born worthy, right? A baby doesn't a newborn baby doesn't question whether it's worthy of being fed, whether it's worthy of being cuddled and held and nourished, right? And I think when we can really drive that home and connect back with that, it kind of helps us move back towards that, because so many of us end up having these self-worth wounds that we've lost connection with just the fact that because we exist, we are worthy. We don't need anything more than existing and being here to be worthy. Hi, Tracy. So our beliefs, when we're young, our subconscious mind is basically a large sponge. We start to absorb all of the things around us because our brain isn't developed enough to be able to discern and create our own judgments around things and our own reasoning. So we start to get these beliefs of conditional love projected on us from our caregivers, right? I'm trying to think of a couple examples. If something's popping in your mind, feel free to pop it in the chat. I mean, I don't want to just be talking at you. I love when this is interactive because we can kind of feed off of each other. But our own caregivers, everyone has wounds. That's just the reality. That is part of the human experience. So there's no judgment to our parents. Our parents are human too, but they will project their own wounds onto us. And this is kind of what starts these conditional love projections. This is when we start to believe that we are worthy based on these sets of, values and expectations and stuff. Does that make sense? This starts the journey of looking for love and acceptance outside of ourselves. So instead of just being of the thought that I'm worthy because I am, because I exist, we start having these external things projected on us. So then we start to think that we need to look outside of ourselves to get that validation, to get that love, to get that acceptance. Does that make sense? We're going to chat now about the prefrontal cortex. Now that's the part of the brain that's in the front part behind, I think it's the very front part, just behind our forehead. The functions of the prefrontal cortex are reasoning, problem solving, comprehension, impulse control, creativity, and perseverance. I'm going to say that one more time. Reasoning, problem solving, comprehension, impulse control, creativity, perseverance. It is one of the last parts of our brain to evolve as we have evolved as a species. The deeper parts, the amygdala and some of those other parts near the brainstem, were the first more primal parts of our brains. The prefrontal cortex is not in every species. I think it's most prevalent in humans, most developed in humans as we've evolved. But it is not only the last thing to have evolved in our brains as we've evolved as a species, it is the last thing to develop as we age. Our prefrontal cortex is not fully developed until we're around 25 years old. So when you think about those functions, reasoning, problem solving, comprehension, impulse control, creativity, perseverance, think about children. and how when they have meltdowns, it kind of makes sense now, right? That part of their brain that helps them understand reasoning, because when you try to reason with a kid and it's like, whoa, this isn't gonna work. They have no idea. They're having a meltdown. There's no logic that you can instill in them to bring them back. Comprehension, understanding things. Kids under a certain age, they're not going to understand sarcasm, right? They're going to take it a fully different way. Impulse control. Look at teenagers, especially teenage boys. There's a reason why their their auto insurance is higher, right? Those dang prefrontal cortexes are not fully developed, and they are doing all kinds of impulsive things. The hormones, of course, don't help either, right? But creativity, perseverance. So when we think about just the fact that it takes us so long for that part of our brain that those things function with to develop, it kind of makes sense why we end up in these sorts of patterns. Because when we're kids, for one, someone could say something about us, and I think it's I would say, as a blanket statement, it's happened to all of us at some point, whether, obviously different situations and severities, but someone has said something to us at some point in our childhood that we took out of context, and maybe they didn't even mean it in a bad way. They were just making a statement. But because we didn't have the ability and the capacity to fully comprehend and interpret what they meant and really get the context of it, it is natural for us to take it in a way that kind of makes it about us. It's like we end up adding it as a label, as part of our identity. Does that resonate with anyone? One example I could think of is maybe, and again, there's a million. Maybe you were gently criticized, or maybe it wasn't even meant to be critical, but maybe it was a comment about, maybe you're struggling with math or a different subject or something, and a teacher or someone else said something about how you were working through it. Sorry, I'm on nighttime brain. I'm not doing so well. And instead of just having the understanding that this subject was difficult for you at this time, you created the belief that I am not good at that. I'm not good at math. I'm not good at reading. And you made it about part of who you are as a person, when really it's just a learning curve. And with a little extra support, maybe some a tutor, or a little bit of extra homework to try a few different exercises to kind of make it click, you decided you just weren't good at it, and that you were someone who wasn't good at math, and you take that through the rest of your educational career, I guess you could say. So how does our prefrontal cortex impact the development of our shadow self and inner child? So what I just said is an example of that. We take these statements that maybe weren't meant to be taken to heart, but we don't have the understanding not to. The other thing is, for the first, I think 7 or 8 years of our life, really I don't think there's really any development of our prefrontal cortex. So we really are absorbing everything our parents and the people we spend the most time with are saying, and their beliefs. And when we start to do this work, one of the exercises is, when we have a belief that maybe is holding us back, either in life, it could be business. One of the first questions I've started asking myself is whose voice is that in my head telling me this belief? Is it mine? Did I develop it along the way? Or did I pick it up through my subconscious programming as a child? Like, is it my dad's voice? Is it my mom's voice? Is it my grandma's voice? Whose voice is it? And when we can start to identify it, especially if it just like comes to you quick and you're like, oh my gosh, that's something my dad said. Then we can say, well, is it serving me? Because if it's not, and if it's just something little, it's kind of like, all right, I'm gonna let that one go. I'm not gonna subscribe to that belief anymore. And of course, if it's more of a belief that is linked to behaviors and stuff, then you have to go a little bit deeper and do a bit more work to kind of break the pattern. But it's as simple as like whose voice is that in my head? Who instilled that belief? Or did I pick it up maybe later on? So it's really, I mean, we can blame our underdeveloped brains for so much of what we believe, how we think, how we feel towards things, and our own reactions. And then the other thing is, um, sometimes when we have experiences that maybe were a little bit unsettling or we just didn't understand, and we didn't get to find a conclusion because we didn't have maybe the comprehension or the context or the support at the time. Maybe I'm trying to think of an example. Basically, we go through an experience and there's no resolution to it, either based on just, yeah, like our brain, or we don't have the support, we don't have the supportive adult in the room or in that situation to help us out. Those things kind of remain unresolved in our subconscious mind, and we will try and subconsciously seek out similar situations as we grow and develop, to try and play out to a finish and a conclusion, and really, yeah, find a conclusion to it. So this is when you see people that have unhealthy patterns and they keep going back to that like same type of person and in a friendship or a relationship, it's like their subconscious mind is like, but if I just do this differently with this person that has the same behavior or same characteristics as the person that you didn't get to have the conclusion with. Our subconscious mind it's always looking for answers, right? It's always problem solving, I guess is the best way to say it. So it thinks if we just bring that person, that it's not that same person but it's someone just like them, and we can replay that movie and create a different ending. But the problem is, a lot of these people, it's never going to happen, right? Just based on who they are and their own stuff. So this is when it gets really frustrating, because we end up going back to these same types of people, these same experience. It doesn't have to be a person, but these same experiences in life, and we're trying to just play it out with a different ending. Sometimes we can, but oftentimes it keeps looping, right? And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different conclusion. So that's where it can get a little tricky. Let me know if anyone kind of feels that. We're going to talk very quickly about ego, the difference between inner child and ego. So our inner child is that subconscious child that lives within us, or those different ages of those experiences that we had that we weren't able to fulfill. Our ego is the external or outward projection that is created to protect our inner child and keep it safe. So essentially, the ego, when you hear about it in different contexts, if you've read about Buddhism or anything, ego, I guess more from like a sciencey place, it's what keeps us safe, right? It's literally its only objective is to keep us safe and keep us small, because exploring new territory, going out of our comfort zone, life changes, they are uncomfortable and they're unknown. So the ego wants to shut it down. And that's that voice in your head that's trying to get you to not do the new thing that could create growth. So the ego is protecting that inner child, that subconscious part of us, so that we can just stay the way we are and we don't have to change. But it also inhibits us from healing, right? We're going to talk briefly about an unhealthy inner child and a healthy inner child. So if our inner child is unhealthy or needs some support, and again, please don't associate this with like bad or wrong or shame or guilt. It's just an observation. It's a mindfulness observation of where we are on our journey. So if your inner child needs some extra support, needs some love, you may feel highly reactive. So things might trigger you a lot. You might get riled up or rattled about things. Those are different words I can use essentially to say the same thing. Your nervous system is activated, or you're kind of operating. You could be living in a kind of state of fight or flight, right? People do. That's that low grade kind of trauma and stress, that chronic stress. You might feel feelings of shame, guilt, and pain. Again, those big emotions that we see coming out as when we start to look at that shadow, that inner child. An inability to be present in the moment. Anxiety and fear. Rigid views and thinking. And perfectionism. When we perfectionism, we can link that to worthiness, right? If I just do this perfect, I'll be worthy of this, or so and so will accept me, or I'll fit in, right? There's just so much around some of these behaviors that we do that have a much deeper root. And when we can start to understand that, it's like, ooh, okay, that makes sense. And then we can start to kind of break it down, right? If we find that these behaviors, these patterns are really kind of holding us back from our goals and where we want to go in life, or I work in network marketing business, so it could be in business as well. This is all interchangeable and so relevant in all areas of our lives. It can be in our relationships, whether like partnership or friendship or family. It's all encompassing. Next one is unhealthy relationship patterns, right? Seeking out those similar experiences to try and rewrite a new ending. Self-sabotage, that's a huge one. Yeah. And again, if you're triggered by any of this, that's okay. You just observe it. It's all good. Underachieving can be another thing. And also rumination. So really just ruminating and kind of obsessing over, something going on in your life, or repeated patterns or thoughts. And also negative self-talk can be a sign of needing to do some inner child work. A healthy inner child, what does that look like? Resilient. So we did a masterclass on resiliency. That is basically the ability to navigate hard times and have that hope and know that you'll get through it and be stronger on the other end. Loving connections is another sign of a healthy inner child. If you have those strong, healthy bonds with people and with yourself, it all starts with us. Creative. If you have creative outlets and you're really fostering that side of yourself. If you have a sense of inner peace, you're just happy where things are. And maybe you're on the path where you're doing the work and you're in the integration period and you have some inner peace. You're like, ooh, I just got through that, whatever I was having a breakthrough with, and I'm in this new kind of territory. And you might have some beautiful, what's the word I want to use? Just like a period of time where you're just like, you're really at peace with this new discovery, this new pattern, this new belief. And then, then the next thing will pop up to look at, but that's the work. A strong sense of self and meaning when you really feel like you're connected with your self-worth and who exactly you are. You learn who you are and what your meaning is here, how you can serve yourself and how you can serve others and spread light. The most powerful belief systems are created by the intensity of the emotional charge that was attached to them, right? So when we think of the memories that stand out to us from childhood that were the most we were most influenced by, impacted by, are the ones that we were most activated by, right? The most emotional charge, where we don't remember everything from our childhood, but we remember those big scary moments. One of them for me was when my sisters played a prank on me. Well, the one sister was talking on the phone, so she wasn't really involved, but she also wasn't helping me. And then my other sister and her friends were playing a prank, and they basically made me think there was a boogeyman downstairs. I was terrified. I ended up running next door in my bare feet to go get help because my sister wouldn't get off the phone. And it just as one of those situations that you remember because it was very frightening. I didn't have the context. I didn't have just the maturity and the awareness to know there wasn't a boogeyman. And I really thought a boogeyman got my sister and her friends. So it's one of those things, even though now I have the maturity and the awareness and the understanding that that wasn't what happened. They were playing a prank on me. Part of that still lives kind of inside me, right? Does that kind of click with anyone? Now we're kind of winding down. I feel like we're on a good kind of path with timing. Ways that we can work with our inner child. So the first one is finding activities that connect you to your emotions, because there's a whole lot of man, I could go into like a whole rant about societal norms and like fuck societal norms, honestly. But that's a whole other thing. I feel like society goes through, like it's just the norm is to numb. The norm is to not have outward expression of emotions. And again, this goes back to our shadow self. This is our parents telling us, like, if we're having a bit of a meltdown, because again, our brain isn't formed, and we don't have the rationalization and the problem solving and the comprehension with things. We're having a full meltdown, and our parents, it's embarrassing, especially if we're in public. So it's like that emotion is wrong. So then we've automatically connected shame to it. So anytime we see someone else acting out, we might get a little activated and be like, we know, even if we're not consciously aware of it, like that was an emotion or an action that was deemed wrong or bad or shameful. And when we see it in other people, that's when we're seeing that mirror, right? It's showing us things that we have suppressed within inside of ourselves. And we either don't want to look at it, or we think that we can't look at it because it's wrong. But when we start to connect back to our emotions, that's when we can literally like bring those experiences back to light and just kind of have a second look at it with a brain that's fully developed, and the maturity and the self-awareness and the desire to actually heal it. There's a difference, right? Than being in the situation that we can't deal with and we don't have the resources and the skills to deal with it. And maybe, maybe whoever was with us that we were experiencing with it also didn't help us to self-regulate. This is kind of a new thing that's part of parenting, or it's becoming a little bit more well known, is helping kids to like take a moment, take a breath, let's breathe together, and helping them calm down. Because another part, even with adults, when we are so worked up, our prefrontal cortex kind of it shuts down, right? And that's why we end up doing impulsive things when we're like super stressed. We're just not thinking. Have you ever been in a state where you're just you're so wound up, you do something like totally weird and you're like, I don't even know why I did that. It's because part of our brain shut down because it wasn't needed at the time. We had to focus on other functions to make sure that we were safe and getting out of this perceived danger that our body thought we were in. We can develop safe relationships. Again, just creating a lot of safety around in our body. I think that's kind of the bottom line. Also creating structure and practicing all types of self-care. And I actually call it, physical, emotional, mental hygiene as well. That's how I kind of look at it, as not this buzzword of this magical thing that we do once in a while. We have a bubble bath or we do a face mask or like whatever we do for self-care. I really see it as a priority, like how we shower every day and have physical hygiene. Doing these things for our mental health, our emotional health, our spiritual health, to me is just as important as our physical health. So I call it hygiene, so that for me, it packs a little extra punch than just self-care. I don't know if anyone else can kind of relate to that, or that kind of sits well with anyone else. And the other thing is, like, those who have raised kids, kids love structure. They love boundaries. Again, because they don't have that problem solving stuff yet, right? So being someone leading them and having routines and structure in their life is so helpful for helping them to feel safe and have a supported nervous system, and to develop their nervous system in a very nourishing way. Developing boundaries, another thing, right? When we're able to say no. And that's going to be one of the future master classes, is around boundaries. I think it's going to be 2 months. I think it's going to be August, maybe. I'm trying to remember which one's which. Connecting with joy. When you hear someone say, connecting with my inner child, that is connecting to like the most joyful parts of your inner being, and connecting to those parts of you, that inner child. It's not just about healing the wounds, it's connecting to the joy as well. What are the things that you love to do as a child that make you giddy? I went for a walk the other day and I stopped at the park and I swung on the swings. That brought me joy. There's just a million little things that we can do to kind of nourish that inner child. Maybe we go for ice cream, maybe we like buy some Dunkaroos we haven't had in 20 years. I still buy dino egg oatmeal, with the dinosaur, like the sugar dinosaurs that melt in the when you put the hot water, the eggs disappear, they dissolve, and then you get the dinosaur. That's feeding my inner child. Did a little Easter egg hunt for me one year during COVID on Easter when we were locked in, and it was like, oh my god, my inner child was like so excited. I got to look for eggs. I don't care that I was 30 years old. It doesn't matter. When we can connect with our inner child, and you'll notice the people that do that kind of more naturally, or they're just more conscious of it, and it just becomes one of those things that's a way of life. Same with mindfulness practice. But you can tell those people, you can pick them out. There's maybe someone in your mind right now who you're like, ooh, they know how to celebrate and feed their inner child, because they're playful, they're creative, they're just fun and loving, and just they just kind of own their weirdness. That's kind of the biggest thing I can think of. And then the last thing I have here is reparenting ourselves and shifting our beliefs. So when I say reparenting, I mean that could be a topic of its own. But essentially, when we start to go back through these experiences and, I guess, re-witness them, either through meditation or journaling, just sitting quietly. You don't have to be doing a guided meditation, but you could be bringing up some emotions mindfully, and then just, again, taking that non-judgmental look at them to understand better now that your brain's fully developed. When we talk about reparenting, this is really asking yourself that through this experience that you are re-witnessing, what was it that you needed in that moment that you didn't have at the time, in order to kind of full circle that experience, or to conclude that experience, right? So that it didn't stick in your subconscious mind as like a thing. What did you need at that time? And now that you're an adult, and you have this awareness, you want to do this work and from a loving place without the judgment, how can you give that younger version of yourself what you needed at the time? How can you reparent yourself in the present, but for that little 8-year-old or that little 6-year-old or that little, I don't know, it could be a 12-year-old, could have been a preteen or a teenage self as well, right? What can you do now? Maybe you just like hold yourself. Again, that goes into the realm of nervous system work, making yourself feel safe, but bringing back that memory, and it's like, oh my gosh, what did you need at that time? And how can you give it to yourself now? So just a couple notes to kind of finish off here. Our patterns and beliefs were formed before we were able to rationalize and understand the context and be able to problem solve and also like speak our minds, right? We lots of things happen. I'm sure I'm not the only one, but lots of things happened when I was a kid that I didn't have like the vocab I can't say the word vocabulary. I was gonna put an extra L in there for some reason. The vocabulary that was required to express myself the way I needed to, maybe in that situation. So that's something that kind of sticks with you even if it's not conscious. You didn't get to like speak your truth, and or maybe you really wanted to say the thing but you felt shame because if you acted out in anger or frustration, that's a wrong emotion, according to whoever has instilled that in you. So then you don't feel like you can speak your truth. And when we think about all of the situations that we've had in our lifetime that we can't speak our truth. We don't feel safe being authentic and feel like we belong, and we spend all this time trying to fit in. Fitting in is when we change ourselves up so that people accept us. Belonging is showing up in the exact light and situation of who we are, and people love us for that. There's such a difference. But the longer we spend in those situations where we don't get to speak our truth, we don't get to show up with who we are, it's like I feel like every single time we lose it chips away a little piece of us, right? And then we get to this point where we decide that we want to go on this journey to kind of find those pieces again, or build ourselves back. And we have to heal those situations, and we have to tell ourselves that, hey, just because that person shamed you in that moment and told you that you were wrong, those emotions were not wrong. I believe that we are meant to feel emotions. No emotion is wrong. We just have to take an inventory of how we're kind of reacting, responding to it, right? And if we do react out of anger or whatever, apologizing after, or taking ownership and all of that, right? Is this clicking for anyone? How are we doing in here? Does anyone have any questions? I guess sorry, a couple more notes. Our inner child tries to resolve past wounds by creating the same situations to use our adult mind to resolve, like I talked about before. So healing our inner child is about finding our way back to our authentic selves, shedding the layers created by our subconscious programming. So it's like we start out this incredible little being. We're so pure, we're so beautiful, we're so worthy. And then we get these layers added on of these different belief systems of those around us when we have no influence on what we decide is our truth. And all these layers build up, and we start to look outside of ourselves for validation and love and acceptance, and we really lose sight of the fact that we're super worthy and who we really are at a core. So the work that I'm talking about here is starting to peel back one layer, observing it, healing it, however that works with whatever tools you need to use for that. And we just start peeling back the layers. So we're like an onion. And eventually we come to this place of, I mean, the work is never done. I'll say that. But we get to a place as we're peeling back the layers that we really start to find acceptance and self-love and self-worth, and we start to show up in our life in such a different way, and we start to shine our light. It's like the light starts to crack through all the layers and shine brighter, and we become a beacon of hope for those around us. The more we do this work, um the more we come into our own power and into our own authenticity. Not only is it so beautiful for us, because I think that's why we're here to live authentically, but we become a beacon of hope for others around us. We give others permission to love themselves and to show up and to do the work and to find themselves amongst all of those onion layers. So I'm going to stop there. I'll give it a moment in case anyone has questions. As I'm waiting, I'll let you know kind of what's next. We are going to do, so the next masterclass will be in July. It'll be July 6th. I'm going to create an event, and it's called Stand Tall. I did 2 graphics yesterday, so I'm just making sure I'm talking about the one. The next one, yes. Why did I forget this? The next one is about people pleasing. We're going to talk about people pleasing in July, and we're going to talk about boundaries in August. So the next one will be July 6th at 8 p.m. inside this group, of course. That's the next free masterclass. I have weekly podcast episodes coming out on Mondays. So there's a brand new one today. You can see it in the guides in the group. Both links there. It's on Apple Podcast and also the Podbean. The podcast is called Living on Lemonade with Lauren, just the same as this community. In terms of working with me a little bit more, I am completing the self-study program. It's called Create Your Calm, and it's some of these foundational pieces that I talk about in the master classes, and with some exercises to do and additional support. I'm going to put in a bonus 30-minute call with me to kind of tie it all together. Once you've gone through the modules, like, let's have a conversation and see where you're at and celebrate the work that you've started on. And that'll be $111. If you're interested, let me know. I'm just finishing up. I'm getting everything organized and put together, and then it'll be like officially ready. I also, something that I've been doing for myself for years. I actually got my first decks when I was like 12, after my friend passed away. But it's an intuitive practice. It's one way that I develop my intuition, self-trust. Yeah, I guess that's kind of just the biggest thing is self-trust. But I use oracle cards. So I do readings. So if you want a reading, we could set one up. They are $30, and I email you. I sit in meditation, I pull some cards, and with the intention that it's the message, it's the love, it's the inspiration that you need the most. And then I send a little video of it. I know Allison had one done for her business, which was super fun. So I'm going to get some testimonials to see what some of the ladies have thought about past ones. And I think that pretty much sums it up. The other thing, actually, and this is not sales related at all, but there's a program that I want to create down the road. I kind of have the foundation laid out, but I would love to have some conversations with people and just chat for 15-20 minutes and just ask you, basically pick your brain. They're research calls, I guess you could call them. And I want to ask a few questions and get an idea of, not only for this program, but within this group too, what do you need? How can I better serve you inside of this free container? And yeah, what are some of the tools that would be helpful? Or, what do you need? So then I can develop some tools around it, right? Masterclass topics. Maybe we do interactive workshops. I think it'd be fun to do an intuitive one where we practice using our intuition and developing it, because again, when we can kind of work with that, we start to understand ourselves better in those inner workings, and we can trust ourselves and make decisions not from external validation and stuff. We really connect with the core of who we are. So that is it for me tonight. Thank you, as always, for hanging out with me. I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your evening and a good sleep. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I will definitely be back in July. I don't know if I'll plan anything. Actually, well, July 6th is too soon to plan anything between because Granny turns 100 at the end of the month. So we're hosting her birthday party. So I've got that to get worked out. But yeah, it'll be a busy couple weeks, but we'll definitely hang out again in here soon. And I can't wait to chat people pleasing with you. It's going to be so good. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful night, and we will talk soon. Good night.